What would you think if I told you that there was a samurai from 400 years ago that could probably walk into any UFC octagon or training facility today and beat every fighter without breaking a sweat? What if I told you that this man actually fought 61 death matches, not sport fights, but death matches, and never lost once? Welcome to Arnie's Brain Train. I'm Alex Arnold, and today I'm going to try to prove to you why Miyamoto Musashi was more lethal than any modern fighter alive. Now look, I love MMA. I compete at the amateur level and I've practiced jiu-jitsu for years. But I also come from a Recon infantry background, and I'm just saying, there's levels to this game that modern combat sports don't even touch. Just a quick disclaimer before we dive in. Yes, I might mispronounce some Japanese words. Yes, you will see AI images mixed in with stock images. And yes, some of you will get offended. Here's the thing. This video is meant to be educational entertainment, not a cultural studies course. If you can't handle that, there's always TikTok. And one final thing, I usually stick to facts and data on this channel. I don't do opinion battles when there's no real evidence either way. But today I'm taking a stance. This isn't just my opinion though, this is backed by serious historical research. I've got several major sources listed in the description, including definitive biographies by actual historians and Musashi's own writings. We're talking real scholarship here, not internet speculation. But in all seriousness, at the end of the day, it's just my opinion against yours. So, let's hop aboard the brain train and see if I can convince you why ancient combat wisdom would absolutely destroy modern techniques. Here we go. Our story begins in Japan in the late 1500s during the Sengoku period. Constant warfare between samurai clans fighting for territory and power. Into this chaos, around 1584, was born Shinmen Takuzo in the village of Miyamoto, who would later adopt that village name and become Miyamoto Musashi. His father, Shinmen Munisai, was a respected warrior and sword instructor, but young Takuzo had serious behavioral problems, violent, uncontrollable, and nothing like the disciplined samurai in training that you might expect. At just 13 years old, Takuzo fought his first duel against a grown man named Arima Kihei from the Shinto Ryu school. While most kids his age were learning basic sword forms, Takuzo grabbed a wooden staff and beat a trained adult warrior to death. This wasn't luck. This was raw talent combined with ruthlessness. Now, in Japanese culture at that time, what separated Musashi from just another violent kid was his obsession with perfection. While other young samurai partied and chased women, he spent every moment studying combat, philosophy, strategy, and warfare psychology. According to historian William Scott Wilson's biography, Musashi was driven by an almost supernatural need to test himself against the strongest opponents. By age 16, he'd already left home to become a Musha Shugyo, a warrior pilgrim wandering Japan to perfect his skills through real combat. Think of it as the world's deadliest gap year, challenging master swordsmen to life or death duels. In those days, Japan was crawling with bandits, ronin, and desperate men who'd kill you for your sandals. Musashi walked into this voluntarily at 16, believing only constant mortal danger could achieve true mastery. Most samurai trained in one sword school their entire lives, perfecting a single style passed down through generations. Musashi took a different approach. He studied every fighting style he could find, absorbed what worked, discarded what didn't, and synthesized everything into something new. His big breakthrough was developing something called the Niten Ryu, the two-sword style. While everyone else used one katana with both hands, following centuries of tradition, Musashi dual-wielded a longsword and a short sword simultaneously. According to his own writings in the Book of Five Rings, this gave him multiple angles of attack that traditional fighters couldn't counter. But what made Musashi more dangerous than any modern combatant wasn't just physical technique. He methodically engineered his mind for warfare. He practiced Mushin, the no-mind state. This was practical combat psychology centuries before psychology existed as a field. Through meditation, he could eliminate emotional reactions like fear, anger, or overconfidence. He could read opponents and react faster than conscious thought. While modern fighters train techniques and conditioning, they're still controlled by emotions. Musashi transcended that. While enemies were angry, scared, or cocky, his mind was clear and calculating. Historian Stephen Turnbull notes that Musashi would arrive at duels deliberately late, disheveled, or using unconventional weapons like wooden oars. He understood that combat was 50% physical skill and 50% psychological warfare. Modern fighters focused almost entirely on the physical. Musashi won the mental game before the first move. These are some of the principles that separate truly dangerous fighters from merely skilled ones. Modern combat sports have rules, referees, weight classes, and time limits. Musashi fought with no rules, no backup, and death as the only consequence for failure. Over his 30-year career, Musashi fought 61 duels where death was on the line and he never lost once. Let's go ahead and examine two of his most significant encounters. The Yoshioka family ran Kyoto's most prestigious sword school, training samurai for generations with connections to the imperial court. Musashi systematically challenged their entire lineage. First, he faced Yoshioka Seijuro, the family head and one of Japan's finest swordsmen. Musashi defeated him so completely that Seijuro became a monk out of shame, abandoning his entire identity. Next came Seijuro's brother, Denshichiro, supposedly even more skilled. Musashi killed him outright during their duel. The Yoshioka family now had lost their two greatest fighters. Desperate, the family broke every rule of honorable combat. They set up a nighttime ambush with dozens of armed retainers and young Matashichiro, the family's last hope. The plan? Surround Musashi in darkness and overwhelm him. Of course, Musashi arrived early, scouted the location, and hid in the bushes. When the ambush was sprung, he emerged from the darkness, killed Matashichiro in a single strike, and fought his way out against overwhelming odds. The Yoshioka school never recovered. Musashi's final and most famous battle was against Sasaki Kojiro on Ganryu Island. Kojiro was the demon of the western provinces, considered by many as Japan's finest swordsman. His weapon was a nodachi called the drying pole, a sword so long it gave incredible reach advantage. At this point in time, Musashi's psychological warfare had reached genius level. The duel was set for dawn. He showed up 3 hours late. While Kojiro watched on the beach, getting nervous and angry, Musashi was planning his victory. Instead of bringing steel swords, Musashi carved a wooden sword from an oar during the boat ride. The crowd thought he had lost his mind. Japan's greatest swordsman with carved wood facing the country's most feared blade. According to historian Noel Perrin's eyewitness accounts, Kojiro's first strike was so fast that it cut the ties holding Musashi's headband, millimeters from death. But in a Sherlock Holmes move, Musashi had calculated everything. His wooden sword was longer than expected, giving just enough reach to counterattack. In one strike, he caught Kojiro in the head, killing him instantly. Musashi bowed to his fallen opponent, got in his boat, and sailed away. He never fought another duel because he had nothing left to prove. Now let's compare really quick. Modern fighters train for specific scenarios. UFC octagon rules, boxing weight classes, military rules of engagement. Musashi trained for absolute warfare where survival was the only rule. His meticulous preparation and psychological positioning weren't martial arts techniques. They were survival skills where weakness meant death. Modern combat sports allow tapping out. They have time limits, weight classes, medical supervision. Musashi operated on a completely different level of consequence, developing skills that modern fighters don't need because the stakes are never that high in controlled environments. After proving himself unbeatable, Musashi retired from dueling at his peak and spent his final decades as a philosopher, artist, and a teacher. This transforms his story from warrior tale to practical wisdom system. In the Book of Five Rings, Musashi laid out principles that Harvard Business School and Fortune 500 companies still teach. His way of strategy applies to mastering any competitive field. According to translator Victor Harris, Musashi believed mastery comes from understanding five elements: ground, foundation and preparation; water, adaptability; fire, aggressive timing; wind, awareness of others' methods; and void, intuitive understanding. Musashi's revolutionary insight: technique without spirit is useless, but spirit without technique is suicide. You need both emotional control and practical skills. He wrote, "You can only fight the way you practice. Your daily habits determine performance under pressure. When stakes are highest, you default to your preparation level." His Dokodo, or way of walking alone, outlined 21 principles for independent living. Examples: do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Avoid distractions that weaken focus. Do not depend on partial feeling. Don't make decisions based on temporary emotions. Be indifferent to where you live. Don't let circumstances control your inner state. Modern psychologists like Dr. Jordan Peterson note that Musashi's emphasis on personal responsibility and emotional regulation mirrors cognitive behavioral therapy. He was doing advanced performative psychology 400 years early, except his laboratory was life or death combat where theories faced lethal testing. But Musashi wasn't just a philosopher. He lived these principles. After mastering warfare, he became a master artist, creating paintings and sculptures that are still considered masterpieces today. He mastered calligraphy, poetry, and tea ceremony. The man who could kill anyone chose to create beauty, because true mastery means conquering every aspect of yourself. So what can we learn from history's most unbeatable warrior? Musashi's life teaches us that mastery isn't about natural talent. Japan was full of talented warriors. What separated Musashi was obsessive dedication to continuous improvement, strategic thinking, and the courage to forge his own path. Key lessons that he taught: first, never stop adapting. Musashi constantly evolved his techniques based on real-world feedback rather than sticking to tradition. Second, master your emotions before trying to master anything else. Fear, anger, and ego are enemies of clear thinking. Third, preparation beats talent when talent doesn't prepare. Musashi's victories came from meticulous planning and psychological preparation, not just sword skill. Most importantly, Musashi showed that the greatest victory is conquering yourself. After proving he was unbeatable in combat, he chose to become unbeatable as a thinker, artist, and human being. His paintings and sculptures from his final years are considered masterpieces because he applied the same mastery principles to art that he'd applied to warfare. So whether you're building a business, mastering a skill, or improving relationships, Musashi's path remains relevant. Relentless preparation, continuous adaptation, emotional mastery, and the courage to walk alone when necessary. Okay, so we got a little deep there, but back to the topic. Why was Musashi more dangerous than any modern fighter? Well, he combined physical training with psychological mastery that modern fighters never develop, weaponizing his mind completely. He adapted constantly instead of sticking to rigid techniques, training for absolute chaos while modern fighters train for specific rule sets. He used strategic thinking to win battles before they began, understanding that preparation and positioning beat raw talent. And he faced consequences that would break modern fighters mentally before they stepped into combat. Musashi proved that true lethality comes from mastering every aspect of warfare: physical, mental, strategic, and psychological. The principles that made him undefeatable Meticulous preparation, ruthless adaptability, mental discipline, strategic thinking, and willingness to fight without rules would dominate in any era. Modern fighters are athletes competing in controlled environments. Musashi was a predator, operating in full kill mode. The question isn't really whether Musashi could beat modern fighters, it's whether modern fighters could survive in his world. Well, that's it everybody, and that's my take into why Miyamoto Musashi was more dangerous than any modern fighter. If this comparison between ancient warrior wisdom and modern combat changed your perspective, hit that like button and subscribe to Arnie's Brain Train for more, sometimes controversial, historical takes. All sources are linked in the description and in the pinned comment below if you want to dive deeper into samurai combat philosophy. What do you think? Could any modern fighter survive against Musashi in a real fight to the death? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone and I love seeing the debates. Until next time, keep your curiosity sharp and never underestimate what ancient warriors can teach modern fighters. And just remember, the world isn't always this simple, but it's always this interesting. See you guys next time. Bye.